Hi, everyone. My name is Marko Novikov. I'm the manager of the Society's Professional Advancement Department, which is responsible for management of the Specialist Accreditation Scheme. Now, this video is being prepared for those of you who intend to come to the QLS Specialist Accreditation Information Evening on 1 March. The purpose of this video is really to give you a general introduction into the QLS Specialist Accreditation Scheme, but also for me to talk a little bit more about the 4 areas of accreditation that are being offered this year. So I'm going to talk to you generally about the application process, about the assessment items themselves, and of course some key dates. I would strongly encourage all of you who are watching this video to please listen carefully to all the matters I'm going to discuss, because they're going to be relevant in preparing you not only for the challenges of the program, but also to engage with our guest speakers at the information evening. Now, our guest speakers are going to include members of each of the advisory committees for this year's accreditation programs, plus we're fortunate to have 2 past graduates from 2019. Now, before I officially start with the presentation, I'd like to first do an important acknowledgement to country. In keeping with our reconciliation commitment, it is culturally appropriate and important to acknowledge the First Nations people as the original inhabitants on the land on which this event is taking place, to recognize the remarkable country north and south of the winding Brisbane River, home of the Turrbal and Niagara nations. So following cultural protocol, we pay our deep respects to all elders past and present, as well as our emerging leaders of tomorrow, and we thank them for their wisdom and for their guidance. And what you see on this presentation slide is essentially what I'm going to discuss. And what I'm first going to start with is a manager's introduction. So this is where I intend to share some of my experiences about the program and insights. Now, there are over 13,000 registered solicitors in Queensland. Of this 13,000, just over 500 are accredited specialists. So quite clearly, if you enroll in one of the accreditation programs and you're successful, you're going to join this very small and elite group of true specialist solicitors in Queensland. The Specialist Accreditation Scheme in Queensland was established for a number of reasons, but I think there's 2 very important ones I'd like to highlight. First, it gives solicitors an opportunity to get formal recognition from QLS, but the fact that they have a high level of competency and practical skills in their area of legal practice. And secondly, it gives guidance to not only the legal profession, but also to members of the public, that those who hold the accreditation are truly specialists in their area of practice. The QLS scheme is part of a national framework of accreditation schemes run by other law societies. So this includes, for example, the Law Institute of Victoria and the Law Society of New South Wales. Therefore, the QLS scheme is part of a national benchmark of recognizing specialist expertise in the areas of accreditation that we offer. Perhaps the most important message I'd like to get across to everyone is the fact that the accreditation programs are not a teaching, learning, or academic experience. The accreditation programs themselves are advanced, rigorous, peer-reviewed, and competency-based assessment programs. They're not designed for solicitors who are still on a learning curve and developing their skills. Rather, it's designed for those solicitors who already have that specialist skill and knowledge, are looking to QLS to gain that formal recognition for it. So if you are looking for more of an academic experience, I'd encourage you to think about doing a master's or a PhD. So just to be clear about this, the accreditation process is very challenging, but it's also very rewarding. And the reason it's challenging is because if accreditation was easy to obtain, then its value wouldn't be as strong as it is. It would hold less meaning, because if everyone in your area of practice is an accredited specialist in that area of practice, there's no way for you to distinguish yourself amongst your peers and to the public as being a true specialist in that area of the law. Now, gaining accreditation holds a number of personal and professional benefits, and I'd just like to highlight a few of them for you. An obvious benefit of being an accredited specialist is it's a way for you to distinguish yourself amongst your peers and to the public. And the way you would do that is you advertise yourself and hold yourself out to the public as an accredited specialist. And you get the benefit of using the National Specialist Accreditation logo, which you see on the PowerPoint presentation slides. And you also get a set of post-nominals. So the accreditation logo and the post-nominals are recognized nationally. If you market yourself in this way as an accredited specialist, it's certainly one way to strengthen your own profile, your professional profile, as a leader in your area of law practice. But also, it's a way to give more credibility to the legal practice you work in. So, for example, if your law firm advertises you as an accredited specialist, it might help to attract new clients, but also hopefully attract other legal practitioners who want to work with you and learn from the best, the true specialists in the field. Accreditation can also assist you in gaining more referrals for your practice, either through colleagues and peers or through the QLS Specialist Accreditation referral website. So for those of you who enroll in an accreditation program this year and you're successful, you're automatically entitled to being named on this list of accredited specialists on the QLS referral tool. And what that means is any member of the public or the profession that's looking for an accredited specialist in a particular area of the law can find you there. Now, when it comes to QLS seminars and conferences, we usually turn to accredited specialists first for those events which have to deal with those areas of accreditation that we offer. So for any succession law event, for example, property law, etc., we'll turn to our accredited specialists first as our guest speakers. So this is certainly one way for you to distinguish yourself amongst your peers and to raise your own personal and professional profile. What I think is probably the most important benefit is that if you gain accreditation, the accreditation belongs to you, not to any legal practice, for example. And your accreditation is portable anywhere you go if you move from one employer to the other. And if you have an accreditation in a national area of accreditation, for example, family law, workplace relations, taxation law, or immigration law, your accreditation is nationally recognized interstate. So if you wanted to move your practice from Queensland to interstate anywhere, including New South Wales, Victoria, or WA, for example, you just simply have to contact the law society in that state to get mutual recognition of your national accreditation. So clearly, as you can see, there's a lot of benefits to becoming an accredited specialist. But one of the other things I like to point out is if you're attempting one of these accreditation programs, whether you pass or fail, you still gain a lot of benefits. First, you're going to be undertaking self-directed study, and you'll be working with some of your peers in a study group. You will learn so much about your area of practice, more so than you even know, perhaps, in preparation for the assessment items. And also, again, whether you pass or fail, so long as you attempt each and every one of the assessment items, and there's 3, which I'll discuss, you get 10 CPD points for your participation. So clearly, I think it's very much worth your while to participate in one of our accreditation programs this year. So that's basically a brief manager's introduction into the scheme. Now I'm going to turn to more specifics about our 2021 accreditation programs. So first off, I'd like to point out that we're running 4 accreditation programs this year: commercial litigation, property law, succession law, and family law. As I mentioned earlier, family law is one of those national areas of accreditation and entitles you to interstate mutual recognition. When we run the QLS Family Law program, we actually run it jointly with the Law Society of New South Wales and the Law Institute of Victoria. Now, QLS itself does not run a taxation law program, but we do offer it as an area of accreditation. And what we encourage our Queensland practitioners to do, if they're interested in becoming accredited specialists in taxation law, is to enroll in the Law Institute of Victorian Taxation Law program. And I've given their contact details on this PowerPoint slide. Again, because taxation law is a national area of accreditation, if you were to, for example, enroll in this year's Victorian Taxation Law program and you were successful, you would be entitled to recognition of your interstate accreditation here in Queensland. And I would essentially help you with all that paperwork. There are a number of documents that you need to be mindful of in terms of preparation for the assessment programs, but also for enrolling. First and foremost, I need you to determine whether you're actually eligible to enroll. So there are some minimum eligibility criteria, and they're all contained in the handbook. But briefly, you need to hold a QLS practicing certificate, and you need to be a full member of QLS. So this program is only open to full members. Secondly, you have to have at least 5 years of post-admission experience as a solicitor. Further, for a particular area of accreditation, you have to demonstrate in the 3 years preceding this year, you can demonstrate substantial involvement in that area of practice. And that threshold is only 25%. So for example, for those of you that might practice, for example, in family law and succession law, you just have to demonstrate that your legal workload in any one of those programs is at least 25%, depending on which one you want to enroll in. For those of you who don't meet the minimum eligibility criteria, you have the opportunity in some limited circumstances to apply to the Specialist Accreditation Board for a discretionary application to be permitted into the program. That's one of the discretionary applications available. Another one is if you are subject to an adverse professional conduct matter, which I'll discuss a little bit later. Now, if you look into the handbook itself, you won't find much information there about the assessment items themselves. They'll be contained in assessment criteria that are approved by the Specialist Accreditation Committees each year. And our committees are working on those documents as we speak, and I'll make sure they're finalized by the first week of March and available on our website. So stay tuned. And of course, once you've reviewed the handbook and the assessment criteria and you think you're ready to enroll in the program this year, then you can access our application form and the referee report forms from the QLS website. So there's some important key dates for the programs this year. Most obvious one is the applications will open on the 1st of March and they'll close on the 31st. The board has to approve each application. And so the board will have a meeting in mid-April in which we'll provide them with all of your application and referee reports. And the board will then confirm which applicants get accepted into the program. At this time, they'll consider standard applications and those that are discretionary applications. And so we'll attempt to notify you by Monday, 19 April. That's our goal. Now, one of the free complimentary events that we offer to candidates who get accepted into the accreditation programs is referred to as an assessment briefing evening. During this evening, members of the different advisory committees will host an event where they get to have a more in-depth Q&A with you about the assessment items themselves and how you prepare for them. And they might even overview one of those assessment items. And I'll get to that a little bit later in this presentation. Now we have an assessment period in which the first assessment item will generally be released in June, and the final ones will be completed by September. It's going to depend on which accreditation program you're in for the different assessment timeframes you're going to have, but essentially that will be the window between June and September. Now, all assessment marking will be conducted between September and October. That's by the advisory committees. And then they'll let us know which candidates have passed the assessment items. And we'll be notifying all candidates in November. And then in December, we're going to hold what is our annual Specialist Accreditation Christmas Breakfast. This is an event where we proudly proclaim the graduates of each accreditation year to the legal profession. So I mentioned that you have to consider a number of important eligibility criteria in the application requirement stage. And so this is essentially what you need to do. It's just a simple checklist. First, determine your eligibility, complete the application form, get references from your peers, and then submit those to us. If you have a discretionary application, you'll see a portion of the application form notifies you that you have to submit a letter of request addressed to the board. Of course, your application form will be emailed to us directly, but you will have a letter in there addressed to the board saying, look, I have a discretionary application for this reason, and I'm seeking the board's discretion to be permitted into the program. If you have any questions about the application process itself, you just email us at this email, spec@qls.com.au. I mentioned this briefly, the eligibility criteria, and I'll go over them one more time just for clarity. Again, you need to be a full member of QLS, hold a practicing certificate, unless you're a government legal officer engaged in government work. You have to have been a solicitor for at least 5 years, and you have to demonstrate in the preceding 3 years substantial involvement in that particular area of accreditation. Now, if you're only a part-time employee solicitor, that's fine. You've just got to demonstrate that you've been working in that area of the law at least 2.5 days per fortnight. As I mentioned, there's two types of discretionary applications. First, whether you are or you have been the subject of an adverse professional conduct matter. Now, there's a definition in the handbook about what that means. But for example, if you've been the subject of disciplinary proceedings with the Legal Services Commissioner or something similar, then that is certainly an adverse professional conduct matter. But please otherwise review the criteria in the handbook. And the second type of discretionary application is you don't meet one of the other eligibility criteria. So for example, if you've only got 4.5 years of post-admission experience, you can apply to the board and say, look, I've only got 4.5 years, but by the time the program finishes, I'll have the full 5 years. So I'm requesting your discretion to be permitted into the program. And again, you'll need a formal letter of request attached to your application. Now, it's important to bear in mind that QLS and the board, in determining all applications for enrollment in all of the programs, we're going to carry out professional standards checks concerning your suitability to be in a program. So for example, if you have been the subject of a proceedings before the Legal Services Commissioner in terms of in court or an investigation, we'll know. So if you have, please let us know, and then we'll have to avoid that discussion with you. Referees. Now, there's a number of criteria that need to be met in terms of the referees themselves as well. So they have to have known you for at least 3 years. They must be members of the legal profession or at least a member of a tribunal or a judiciary in the Australian jurisdiction. For those that are legal practitioners, they must have at least 5 years post-admission experience. And at least one of those referees, they must be able to demonstrate substantial involvement in that area of practice. And one can be a colleague or a partner at your current place of employment. So when I say partner, I essentially mean principal. Now, a referee cannot be someone who's a close personal friend or relative, unless for some reason they can personally attest to your expertise in that area of accreditation. So a personal friend can be a colleague as well. It can't be another applicant, and it cannot be a member of the QLS staff, the Specialist Accreditation Board, or the advisory committees, irrespective of which program that's in. So if you're applying for the family law program and you're seeking a referee from an advisory committee from the succession law program, they're unable to provide you that referee, again, for conflict of interest reasons. So just a reminder, when you're submitting your application, you need a completed application form, completed referee reports. There's a non-refundable application fee of $140, not including GST. With GST, it's about $154. Again, that is non-refundable. So When you pay that fee, we consider your application. If it's approved by the board, that's wonderful, you're in the program. If you're not approved into the program for some reason, that fee is not refundable. And you have to submit all those applications by 31 March. And we prefer all applications to be submitted online. It's just easier for us to track, and you would do that by email. Again, our specific email for the Specialist Accreditation team is contained on that slide. So we have three assessment items in each area of accreditation. Generally speaking, the take-home assessment is released as the first assessment item, and it'll be in June or July this year, depending on your program. And then that will be followed by the oral assessment and the written exam. So you may sit the written exam first, then the oral assessment, or vice versa. Again, it depends on the specific advisory committee determining how they want to conduct the assessments. The most important thing to bear in mind is, in order to be an accredited specialist, you must pass all three assessment items. Now, when it comes to how we're going to conduct those assessments or provide them to you, we have a couple of options. So some of those assessment items may be conducted in person at QLS premises. This is how we've traditionally undertaken them. And we managed to also complete, even last year during the COVID-19 situation, conduct all of our written exams in person here at QLS premises. Of course, maintaining COVID-safe measures. We don't know what will happen, and so for that this year, in case we have a spur of the moment lockdown, that we need to be prepared. So one of the other ways that we can deliver the assessment items to you is online. So QLS now has a learning management system, which is called Canvas. And for those of you who get accepted as candidates into any accreditation program, we're going to open a Canvas account for you. The other way we can conduct some of the assessment items, for example, the oral assessment, is via Microsoft Teams. It's how we actually conduct our practice management courses right now. So the take-home assessment itself, we're going to upload it to Canvas, and you'll be able to access it from there. You'll also be able to complete the take-home assessment on your laptop, at home, desktop, whatever the case may be, and upload it back onto Canvas for grading. Now, the take-home assessment, depending on which accreditation program you're in, usually entails this: a letter of advice to a client, and then some sort of mock file, whether that be preparing court documents, whether it's preparing a will or a contract or a lease agreement, something of that nature. And again, it's going to be distributed to candidates via Canvas. The purpose of the take-home assessment is to assess your ability to deal with complex issues and draft relevant documents. It's pretty much research-based. And it's also the bread and butter of what we do as solicitors. Now, you'll be given a number of weeks to complete the take-home assessment, and the time frame, again, depends on what is determined by the specific advisory committee for the specific area of accreditation. Now, you'll get your instructions about how to complete the take-home assessment. But essentially, you can use office resources, but consultation with any other person, whether that's a candidate, another solicitor, a barrister, it's absolutely not permitted. And you're going to sign an undertaking to this effect. You'll also be signing a QLS academic misconduct policy, and I will confirm that Canvas has a plagiarism function. So definitely, please submit only your work. Now, when it comes to the written exam, it's very similar to what you would have completed in universities and undertaking your law courses. And it's meant to look at your areas of knowledge and skills that can be tested. Will all be referred to in the assessment criteria when it's released. But essentially, the exam will follow this sort of format. It'll be 3 hours of written time and 30 minutes of reading time. The advisory committees will give you an option of whether you want to complete the written exam electronically, so from a laptop, for example, or when do you want to complete the hard copy version. So if we're going to host the exam at QLS premises, you can bring your laptop and we'll give you the electronic version, but you can also bring your laptop to use as an additional resource while you're completing the hard copy version. Now it is an open book, so you can bring anything you want, but internet access is strictly prohibited. Now you'll get more exact details about the exam conditions once you're a candidate in the program, and we'll provide all that information to you in written form. The oral assessment is the most interesting one in the sense that each accreditation committee has a number of options for which they can assess candidates on the oral assessment. For some of them, it's a simulated client interview, and that'll be the case with the family law program and the succession law program. For the property law program, for example, it's going to be a peer interview where two members of the advisory committee are essentially going to hold like an interview session with you to ask you some very important questions for assessing in terms of property law. And for the commercial litigation program, it's going to be a simulated court hearing. And more than likely, we're going to host that simulated court hearing here at QLS premises. Now, we've tended to use this form of assessment, the court hearing, for the criminal law program as well. So we'll bring in judges or barristers, former and current, to be assisting with that process. So it's actually very exciting and interesting. The purpose of this specific assessment is the committee wants you to demonstrate specialist knowledge and communication and/or advocacy skills. As I mentioned earlier, you can actually form study groups. So it's okay for all of you to study together in terms of exam preparation, but please bear in mind, you're not allowed to actually assist each other when it comes to preparing or drafting answers for your take-home assessment. As I said, Canvas has a plagiarism function. So each candidate's required to sign a QLS academic misconduct policy declaration and separate undertaking that the work you submit is the result of your own efforts and solely completed by you. If you're interested in joining a study group, you'll be able to indicate that on the application form. Then we're going to share your email and name with other candidates in the program. So when you give us that information on the application form, you're consenting to us sharing that personal identifying information with other candidates in the program. And then you can form study buddies. Now, I've been asked about this photo on the PowerPoint slide, and I can tell you I've got it from the options available on PowerPoint, but some friendly faces nonetheless. Now, we do a number of things to assist candidates in preparing for the assessments. One of the ways, obviously, is through the assessment briefing evening, but another way is we're going to give you access to what are called as past assessment kits. So these past assessment kits usually entail past written exams and past take-home assignments. So for this year's accreditation programs, it won't contain any of the assessment items delivered at the most recent program. So for example, for family law and succession law, the last time, and property law, the last time it was conducted was in 2019. So we won't include any assessment items from then, but we'll include assessment items from 2017, 2015, etc. And those will be available to candidates only on Canvas, either in April or May. As I mentioned, we're going to hold an assessment briefing evening for candidates only. The intention is to hold it at QLS premises, but again, we have to be mindful of any spur of the moment lockdowns. And so to ensure everyone's safety, we're also going to consider online options. Now the dates are still to be considered, but our hope is that they'll be conducted in May or June. And I'll let everyone who's a candidate know well in advance of when the evenings will actually be held. Now, members of the advisory committee will actually intend to deliver what we call a mini class master session. So you'll get a review of a question or a set of questions from a previous assessment, some guidance on how the committee members expect you to respond to those particular assessment items. And then of course, a general Q&A where you can get more general and in-depth information about the assessment items themselves as the committee members will be preparing it. Of course, the committee members won't be able to tell you what to expect on the particular assessment item, but the information discussed during the assessment briefing evening is intended to be as a guide, and a very useful guide to help you prepare. Now, QLS is also going to host what are referred to as advanced classes. These advanced classes are open to all legal practitioners, so not just those interested in the accreditation programs or those who are enrolled as candidates. So it's open to all QLS legal practitioners, and it's going to be a CPD event and a paid event. And those are the dates we've outlined so far for succession law, commercial litigation, and family law. We're still working on a specific date for the property law program, property law advanced class, and I'll let you know ahead of time. Again, this event is going to be hosted by the QLS professional development team, so not my team, and therefore any information that's going to be available about these specific masterclasses will be on our website, but also we'll make that information available to our candidates through Canvas. This is where it gets most exciting. If you're a successful graduate, then you're going to be able to hold yourself out as an accredited specialist, and we're going to do whatever we can to help promote you to the profession and to the public. The first thing you need to know when you pass one of the accreditation programs is that we have an accreditation fee. It's an annual fee you pay year by year, similar to your practicing certificate and your membership renewal fees, but it'll be a pro rata amount based on when we issue you the invoice confirming that you've passed the program. And then in December, again, we're going to present all successful graduates with their specialist accreditation certificates at the Christmas breakfast event, in which the Chief Justice will actually attend and hand out the certificates. So you'll get a chance to meet her honor. Now, I mentioned this earlier as part of the manager's introduction. Whether you pass or fail the accreditation programs this year, as long as you complete all 3 assessment items, you can claim 10 CPD points for the current CPD year. Actually, that should say 10 CPD points for the 2021-2022 assessment period. So you forgive me, that's just an error on the slide. So let me repeat, by completing all of the assessment items, you get 10 CPD points for the 2021-2022 CPD year. So the next one coming up. You get 8 general CPD points, 1 CPD point in practical legal skills, practical legal ethics, sorry, is a core area, and 1 CPD point in professional skills core area as well. You only need 1 CPD point in a core area of practice management and business skills, and you'll essentially have all the CPD points you need for the CPD year. Now, for those of you who are successful in gaining accreditation, there's obligations for maintaining your accreditation as well. So you have to renew it every year. So in order to renew your accreditation year by year, you need to continue to be a full member of QLS, and you need to continue to hold a practicing certificate. However, there are exemptions for those who are government legal officers, and you just need to contact either my team or myself to discuss those options. But the non-negotiables are that you need to continue to maintain substantial involvement. You need to complete 15 CPD points per year. So you actually end up having to complete 5 extra CPD points as compared to other practitioners. So of that 15 CPD points, 10 must be in your area of accreditation. And then of course, the remainder are going to be in your compulsory course CPD points and 2 general CPD points. And very importantly, you have to pay the annual fee. If you don't pay the annual fee, you don't get to keep your accreditation. Just like if you don't pay the annual fee for your practicing certificate, you're not registered as a solicitor with QLS and you don't get that practicing certificate. Again, unless you have an exemption as a government legal officer. But even if you are a government legal officer, just want to confirm you nonetheless have to pay the annual accreditation fee. Now that is essentially my short presentation. Again, this is intended to be a pre-recording ahead of the Specialist Accreditation Information Evening on the 1st of March. If you've been watching this video, then you'll be more prepared to engage with our guest speakers on the evening. So I wish everyone a great rest of the day, and hopefully I'll be seeing all of you at the information evening on the 1st of March. Thank you.